You will soon be living inside the metaverse, whether you like it or not. Instead of looking at your screen as you are right now, you will be living inside of the screen. And this isn't an exaggeration. Microsoft, McDonald's, Apple, Facebook, Nike, Walmart, Gucci are just some of the companies convinced of our future in the metaverse. And tech billionaires are doing everything they can to make this happen. Mark Zuckerberg went so far as to change Facebook's name to Meta as he works to become the god of our new reality. In his own words, we want to get as many people as possible to be able to experience virtual reality and be able to jump into the metaverse and to have these social experiences within it. Because of this, Walmart is buying up property and its own crypto for the metaverse. Gucci is making meta-only clothing, Nike is developing its own metaverse shoes, and Microsoft recently bought Activision for $70 billion, simply to propel Microsoft into the metaverse. But then why is all of this happening? What's all the hype? I mean, on the surface, it would seem like the market is rejecting the metaverse entirely. After Facebook's pivot into the metaverse, the company has been tanking and is currently seeing the worst losses in the company's history, with Zuckerberg's personal net worth dropping by $30 billion. Because of this, most people think that the metaverse is over, that this was all just a blip, just some dystopian fantasy. But this couldn't be any further from the truth. In the last 5 years, we've been conditioned to join the metaverse, conditioned by billion-dollar companies using split testing and your own psychology against you. And the best part is, you never even realized it. Which is why by 2030, we will all be living inside a hyper-real virtual reality. Here's how. The virtual world is already central to millennials and Zoomers' lives. We spend almost all of our waking hours looking at screens for work, to socialize, to read, and to shop. In America, the average person spends 7 hours a day looking at their screens. Added onto that, 66% of the American population are active video game users. One of the most popular games played is Roblox. Roblox is the very basic, primitive version of the metaverse Mark Zuckerberg envisions. But to understand the full scope of Facebook's metaverse, we first need to understand Roblox. In early 2021, people spent almost 10 billion hours playing Roblox, spending roughly $652 million on the site's virtual currency, Robux. Robux allows users to buy hats, vehicles, and other items for their characters, with the game being free for anyone to play, allowing users to come together to socialize and build their own worlds. And by creating this very basic version of the metaverse, Roblox, a free basic game, is now worth $50 billion. And this story is all the same with other open world games like Fortnite, with the average Fortnite user spending hundreds of hours in the game. And like Roblox, they have their own personal avatar and they interact with others using virtual currencies, again making the game worth almost $30 billion. So then why are these free games worth so much money? Because investors and big tech giants know the importance of the technology behind these games. They understand that the design of games like Roblox and Fortnite will change the world as we know it. It's why Gucci created a virtual Gucci garden for Roblox, with Gucci going so far as to create his own metaverse division. And Ralph Lauren now has a virtual Ralph Lauren ski store inside the Roblox metaverse. The British Fashion Council even hosted a fashion award for the metaverse fashion design on Roblox. Likewise, Louis Vuitton has been creating special skins for Fortnite. And it seems like almost every week since Facebook's transformation into Meta, brands across every single niche have been building up their metaverse products. And this is exactly why Microsoft bought Activision for $70 billion. With Microsoft executives stating that this deal would provide the building blocks for the metaverse. Now on the surface, it would seem like Activision isn't all too involved in the metaverse. However, by being able to hook millions into its games like World of Warcraft, Activision has a huge influence on gamers. And so Microsoft is betting that Activision will have a huge influence over metaverse users. To quote Matthew Ball, most companies now see that the metaverse is around the corner, with one research firm estimating that the market for the metaverse technologies, which includes games, virtual reality headsets, and other emerging gadgets and online services, topped $49 billion in 2020 and has grown by 40% every single year. And this process is only speeding up as I speak, because this is the evolution of the internet. And so it's through all of this process that we have been quietly walking into the metaverse. With all the time we spend looking at our screens through phones, computers, Roblox, World of Warcraft, we have been conditioned to accept it. But this is only one tiny step in a much bigger picture, because these companies aren't funneling all this money just for us to look at screens. They are funneling this money because they understand something. Companies are now understanding that all of our physical products will be replaced by the digital. They understand that the whole of society won't just be staring at our screens, we will be living inside of them. Now, as we discussed, in games like Roblox and Fortnite, you can access virtual items. You can wear fancy clothes and shoes and guns from loot boxes. But the question is, do you really own these things? I mean, one of the main issues with loot boxes in games is that not only is it gambling for children, but even when you do gamble and win, you still don't own anything. Instead, what you own is owned by the developers of the games you are in. So then this raises the very important question, will you truly own what you buy in the metaverse? And if not, what does that mean for society? Well, the truth is that if Mark Zuckerberg has control of the Switch, Zuckerberg has total control of our new reality. He will be the one who decides if you own something or not, because he and his group of investors are the true owners of the metaverse, which means you will never own anything. Now, to some, this might sound like a good thing. At least that's what the World Economic Forum thinks. This lack of ownership is perfect for those who hate freedom the most, because when people don't own anything, when they don't own real property, possessions and resources, people can never be free. They don't own their lives. If you're on a game like Fortnite, for example, some developer could, by accident or not, take away all your loot without you having any recourse. Because you don't own the game or anything inside of it, you just feel like you do. And so if the metaverse becomes centralized like these games, this means that what you think you own will quite literally own you. Your avatar, your designs, your digital assets will all be loaded on a universe run by Mark Zuckerberg. But of course, you'll feel like you own this stuff. You'll feel like you really do own a pair of Nike NFT shoes. You'll think you really are buying things from Walmart. Because when people talk about the metaverse, they like to throw around terms like blockchain technology that gives you a sense of security. Because for the most part, you do own blockchain technology, which is exactly why cryptocurrencies have become so popular. And it's this premise of the metaverse being this decentralized blockchain paradise, a place of virtual ownership that lures people into the metaverse. But this premise is based on a lie. But before we continue, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Masterworks. Facebook isn't the only thing making people's lives harder nowadays. The stock market has been whiplashed by uncertainty with inflation at a 40-year high. Not only that, but the Federal Reserve is set to increase interest rates, and the S&P 500 is having its worst start to a year ever. So it's no wonder more than half of Americans think a stock market crash is coming soon. So let me ask you this, is your portfolio diversified and protected? If not, one company I respect can help you do just that, Masterworks. They let you go beyond boring old stocks and bonds and diversify with an asset class history's wealthiest titans used to safeguard their riches: rare art. This may surprise you, but art is now established alongside things like real estate as a major asset class. And that's coming from experts at UBS, Deloitte and Citi. According to Citi, art has a low correlation to equities, and contemporary art specifically has outpaced the S&P 500 returns by 164% from 1995 to 2021. In other words, art as an investment gives solid rates of appreciation with lower volatility than the stock market. It's no surprise that subscribers have been signing up for months, joining over 300,000 other members on the platform. And now you can skip their waitlist and invest alongside them. Just go to the link in my bio for priority access. Mark Zuckerberg isn't planning to spend $10 billion in 2022 alone for a universe he doesn't control. Zuckerberg wants a centralized virtual reality that hosts our new global society. He wants to control the switch of a new generation. He wants to control an ecosystem of digital services, platforms, property, connections, and experiences. Because the metaverse for Zuckerberg is the next logical step for even more power. The metaverse will be the ultimate extension of our growing authoritarianism and centralized society. I mean, we're already seeing this trend metastasize in real time. For example, Rishi Sunak, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, discussed at the latest G7 meeting Britain's future plans. One of the most striking announcements was his plans for the UK to introduce a central digital banking currency. The aim being that this digital currency will replace paper money with digital money as a competitor to cryptocurrency. But unlike decentralized cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, this currency will instead be controlled through the banks. So instead of having a bank account with HSBC or Barclays, you will have a bank account directly with the government where you're given digital money. These actions will invert our path to a decentralized economy and will instead catalyze a wave of even more government control. Because in addition to this, the government announced at the G7 the plans for a programmable digital currency, so that when you earn money from your job, you are being paid with a programmable currency controlled by the government. The idea being that the use of this money will be restricted to whatever is deemed acceptable by your employer or government. Also that you can't buy certain foods, you can't buy certain amounts of alcohol or tobacco, or you can't go to different places. Or if you do something your employer doesn't like, you won't be able to spend this money.
The group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK.
This is the plan for the next decade. Governments are doing everything they can to create digital cash. Cash programmed so that it's only spent on what governments and employers deem sensible.
What they've said, and why the word programmable was in that headline, was they've said that this money that you will earn from work, instead of having paper money, you have this digital money. It's programmable so that you can't buy certain foods, or if you do something that your employer doesn't like, it's all in that article. You won't be able to spend your money. In other words, it's not money, they're vouchers. They're like food vouchers. And they can be programmed so that, like the Chinese social credit system, that if you try and use them on a certain thing, it won't work. You say you want to buy a burger and they want you to buy bugs, which is one of the examples used. If you start to try and buy unhealthy meat, just won't work. And it explicitly uses the words, won't be used on something that the employer deems inappropriate or the state deems inappropriate.
And this is great news for Zuckerberg and his plans for the Metaverse, where your property, your food, your lifestyle is controlled by a minority of technocrats. However, the Metaverse won't be sold in this way. It will be sold as a simple, more social and all-encompassing Roblox. It's not going to be sold as some hellish dystopian virtual prison, and that's exactly why Zuckerberg is doing everything he can to polish the image of the Metaverse. He wants to make it appealing to all sections of society, and so it should be no surprise that the Metaverse has been partnering up with religious groups to appear wholesome and non-threatening.
Religious leaders like Sam Collier, the pastor of the megachurch Hillsong, has already been courted into joining the Metaverse, with Facebook's main proposition being that the church could gain far-reaching expansion if they were to join in on the Metaverse. Which is why, according to Facebook's chief operating officer Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook hopes to, quote, host religious services in virtual reality spaces as well as use augmented reality as an educational tool to teach children the story of their faith. With even Bishop Robert Barron claiming that the Metaverse is now giving people, quote, the kind of intimate experience of the Mass they wouldn't normally have. And people don't realize that this isn't an exaggeration. People are already getting married inside the Metaverse, businesses are setting up shop in the Metaverse, and Snoop Dogg is even buying virtual property in the Metaverse, with fans of Snoop Dogg squabbling cheek by jowl for virtual space next to their idol. And this is just the beginning. As I mentioned at the start of this video, companies are eager to invest untold billions into the Metaverse, because they understand how big this is gonna be. They dream of a world where everywhere you go, everything you do, everyone you meet can be sponsored by a new company and a new advert, where your life is quite literally interrupted with real-time ads using your psychology against you in ways you've never seen before. You know, the Metaverse bears this uncanny resemblance to the idea of subsidized time in David Foster Wallace's book Infinite Jest. In the book, subsidized time is the idea that each year on Earth becomes subsidized by a specific corporate sponsor. So for example, next year is no longer 2022, but it's instead the year of the Whopper or the year of Glad or dairy products from the American heartland. But still, I know there's going to be a lot of you who will think, why does any of this actually matter? What's so bad about all of this? It will just be like a more advanced version of Roblox, right? What's so bad about that? Well, the sad truth is, this isn't even the start. So stick with me here as we explore the depths of the Metaverse rabbit hole. Zuckerberg refers to the Metaverse as, quote, an embodied internet where you're in the experience and not just looking at it. Because the average American spending 7 hours a day looking at screens just isn't enough. It means that 2/3 of your life is still in the real world, which is a serious issue for Zuckerberg. Screens just aren't providing you that all-encompassing sensory immersion. And it's this premise that is causing corporations to spend billions on the Metaverse, to addict the population into a world of even more instant pleasure and constant dopamine. In the book Brave New World, Aldous Huxley warned us that the future won't necessarily progress humankind. The book warns us that access to instant pleasure and self-gratification gives superficial happiness rather than responsibility and true meaning. In the book, the characters do everything they can to avoid facing the truth about their reality, relying on a drug called Soma to make them content. And this idea of a false reality has been played on throughout history. I mean, even back in 375 BC, Plato foresaw the dangers of the Metaverse. At the start of Book 7 of Plato's Republic, Plato talks about people living in a cave. These people have always lived inside of the cave and don't know
anything about the outside world. All the people can see is the shadow of things thrown up on the wall by the fire. The people in the cave are fascinated by the reflections on the walls of people, birds, and animals. They assume they're real and think that if you pay enough attention to these shadows, you'll understand and succeed in life. The thing is, they don't realize it's an illusion. They talk enthusiastically about the shadows and take pride in their wisdom, but one day, someone finds a way out of the cave where he sees the true form of all the shadows. He sees the stars, animals, and the vastness of the universe. He has come into contact with the true nature of being, and so he makes his way back to the cave to help out his friends. And when he explains to them what the sun is and what a real tree is like, the cave dwellers get angry and plot to kill him because this guy is questioning their false reality. But what if this illusion doesn't only pertain to a small group of cave dwellers? And this is a perfect metaphor to describe the metaverse, where a false reality becomes normal daily life for billions around the world. And this is why the truth has to be fought for. Zuckerberg will suffocate the truth. He will smear dissidents, using the metaverse to usher in a new order. With all this money being projected into the metaverse, you have to understand that this isn't just some basic Roblox stuff. You'll see online people mocking the metaverse. You see all the people playing these glitchy, bad, basic games that make the metaverse seem like a joke. But the metaverse that Zuckerberg envisions is something far greater than we can imagine. The metaverse will host religious services, businesses, fashion shows, concerts, shops, workspaces, and almost every function of society. The metaverse will feel so real that you'll be able to touch the metaverse. You'll even be able to smell the sulfur scents of the metaverse. You will never have to go outside. Instead, you can wander through the leafy idyls of the metaverse, touching the leaves and trees, smelling the piney scents and the fresh grass. This sort of thing is a huge industry that almost no one outside of Silicon Valley knows about. But inside Silicon Valley, it's a whole other story. In the valley, everyone and their dog is trying to integrate AI with human consciousness. And if there's one thing almost as grating as Zuckerberg's metaverse, it's Elon Musk's brain chip company Neuralink. Elon Musk is spending hundreds of millions on Neuralink. And now, for those of you who don't know, Neuralink is a business that aims to create a brain chip that will link your brain to the computer, enabling you to carry out actions only through your thoughts. Ostensibly, Neuralink will help cure paraplegics and Parkinson's. But really, this is, as Musk claims, a way to save humans from AI annihilation, and to ensure humans' domination of super-intelligent AI. The long-term aspiration of Neuralink is to, quote, achieve a symbiosis with artificial intelligence. He says he'll do this with, quote, an electrode-to-neuron interface at a micro level, and a chip and a bunch of tiny wires that will be implanted into your skull. I believe this can be done, Elon said. It's probably on the order of a decade. And just like the metaverse, this technology is accelerating at a horrific pace. Neuralink has already worked on both pigs and monkeys, with these chips being inserted into monkeys' brains, with the monkeys' neurons communicating with computers via a small receiver. And this was so effective that Neuralink enabled monkeys to play a game of Pong without a controller or keyboard. Instead, these monkeys played Pong with only their mind. However, as you'd imagine, these experiments didn't come without their consequences. The animals Neuralink experimented on went through excruciating pain. They were tortured and some even died. One monkey was documented as having missing fingers and toes from, quote, self-mutilation or some other unspecified trauma. And luckily for you, Musk is hoping to begin these tests on humans. And I think it should be pretty clear by now where this technology will be going once it's effective for humans. And likewise, Microsoft is going all in on virtual reality headsets, partnering up with the US Army to supply its HoloLens technology for $21 billion over 10 years. Because the US government understands how truly powerful this stuff is. This HoloLens technology will upgrade soldiers' capabilities through enhanced situational awareness, information sharing, and better decision making. And Google and Apple are quickly following suit with the creation of their own new VR headsets. All of this technology will allow you to perfectly sync up into the metaverse, which is why it's absolutely no surprise that Facebook has been doing everything it can to dominate the virtual reality market, acquiring Oculus for $2 billion in 2014, giving Facebook control over 75% of the virtual reality market. Zuck's plan being that these headsets will no longer sell for hundreds of dollars, but instead will be sold for free, with these headsets being massively subsidized, a generous gesture from Mr. Zuck. But as is always the case, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Facebook, now known as Meta, is doing all of this to manipulate you by monopolizing human consciousness by giving you an expensive headset for free. You become intrigued to peek into what the future might be, what this hype is all about, and then once your family and friends jump in, when people start shopping in the metaverse, touching and smelling the sights, when everyone starts plugging in their brain chips to move themselves without ever actually moving their real body, people will then be able to do everything they dreamed of. They can be what they want, do what they want, when they want. They'll go to the Gucci Metaverse store. They'll stop by at Walmart and McDonald's and maybe even catch up with some friends. And then soon enough, Zuckerberg will have achieved his goal. For many, the metaverse will be better than reality. And when enough influential people, businesses and cultural groups are in, you either jump in as well, or you become an outcast. You become a lonely, despondent loser who's stuck in the real world. And just like that, everything starts to come together. From Microsoft buying Activision, Nike selling NFT shoes, and Gucci having its own metaverse department, it all starts to make sense why Facebook pivoted towards the metaverse. We all laughed at it, we memed it, we thought it was a joke. We saw Meta's stock price plummet and thought nothing more of it. But if anything, this stock plummet is an ominous sign of what's coming next. You see, when you're a company like Facebook, short-term losses like this often amount to long-term growth. This is a model seen in all successful businesses. Amazon, Tesla, Netflix. It's the model Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and all the other billionaires live by. And it's this model that will allow Meta to quite literally take over the world. People don't take this seriously enough. Facebook's pivot into the metaverse was pilloried by commentators, news outlets, and YouTubers alike. You'll always see people saying things like the public will just not react to it. It looks too terrible, no one will buy it. But that's only because we're not the customers. The customers are the multinationals, the governments, the mega corporations, and the other big tech giants, and they all want a piece of the pie. These are the same people who want government-controlled digital currencies, the same people who want to live in a Checkpoint Charlie society, the people who want to see the stale corporate censorship leap from social media into our own new reality. The public isn't asking for the metaverse, we are being given the metaverse, but we need to make the choice. Will we sacrifice the trials and tribulations of the present for the future instant gratification that's holding us back right now? Will we sacrifice our bodies, minds, and freedom for a quick dopamine hit? Or will people see the metaverse for what it truly is? Only time will tell, but when you go outside and look around you, when you take time to notice our absorption into screens, our autopilot absorptions into mindless social media feedback loops, our incessant need to be stimulated at every second of the day, when you start to realize this stuff, things become quite sinister, and I personally become fearful that Zuckerberg's predictions for 2030 might not be so funny after all.